waste too much time, but we're in our series entitled Made, and this morning I want to talk from the thought, an all-condition winner. An all-condition winner. People believe that success only happens in the most optimal of circumstances. That the only way to find yourself being successful, the only way you can discover being a winner is when everything is going your way. And the problem with that theory is that there have been too many people that have experienced life having everything lined up and still found a way to lose. Any of y'all watch sports? You can have the most talent. You can have the best of everything, the best coaching, the best this, the best that, but every given moment that you step on a court, step on a field, there is the possibility that you can lose. You can lose because you didn't pay attention. You can lose because you didn't keep your attention to every detail. But when it comes to God, and going back to the beginning of all this, we are created in the image and likeness of God, which means that we have the capacity to be like God in creativity, in the things that we do, how we manage things, how we manage life, how we do all that stuff, right? We have the capacity. We have the ability because we have connection with God, because God has given us all that we need and then some so that we can be our absolute best. But what happens when we get into situations that we don't desire to be in? What happens when we find ourselves, because of decisions we make, worse off than we should be? What happens when life conspires against us and all of a sudden we're not where we want to be whatsoever? Just because you're in a certain position in life does not mean that all of a sudden you can no longer win. Matter of fact, those are the times when you need to thank God in advance, because God is ready to show you something that you didn't see before. Let me prove my point. See, Israel got into some mess again. You see, Israel always seemed to be getting into mess all the time. For whatever reason, there's always a generation of people throughout the Old Testament that decide they want to test God when it comes to what God wants to do. And every time they come up with some reason to come up with why they can do it better than God has laid it out, God always has to correct them. And at this point in Jeremiah, this is the point of correction, where they have been now exiled to Babylon. They have been sent to a place that is not their home. They are now subject to the leadership and the governmental authority of Babylon. Why would God do such a thing? Well, God had to correct some behavior within the nation. And because that nation that he loves needed correction, he needed to send them away from all of their creature comforts, all the things that they had known, all the things that they had obtained, to let them know, hey, you ain't gonna run me. Some of y'all know what that last phrase sounds like. You told your kids that you ain't running me. I tell my son that from time to time, even though he's a good kid, every once in a while, because now he's getting older and he's exposed to more, I let him know, son, you're just not going to run me everywhere. So God is saying to Israel, no, y'all done fooled around and messed up. You got to go. I don't need to fool with you in the place I promised you. You need to learn some stuff and get yourself together. But here's the interesting part about God. God will always correct whom he loves, but also will teach you about what you need to do, so when it's time to come back, you're actually better than what you once were. You see, when you're not doing the things of God, when you're not trying to do the things of God, okay, when you are not even thinking about the things of God, you have automatically put yourself in a position to lose. It doesn't matter what you touch. is going to be a loss. It doesn't matter what you try to come up with, as some of us would say that are younger, you're going to take this L. You are not going to win trying to prove to God your way is better. But God will do whatever it takes to make sure you understand that if you understand and follow what I am putting out here for you, no matter what condition you're in, you have no choice but to win. Jeremiah the prophet says this, says, listen, y'all, I know there's some among you that call themselves prophets, trying to tell you that this is going to be a short period of time, and that in the next 6 months or so, I'm exaggerating a little bit, that we're going to be up out of this mess and we're going back home. That ain't what God said. Matter of fact, God said that this is going to be a 70-year exile. You are not going back until after 70 years. And even at that, God really said, after 70, I'm going to come and visit you. In other words, at that moment, I will make the determination whether or not to let you back or not. But while you are away from your home, here's what you need to do. This is the odd thing. Sean, this was odd. And this is in the Bible, but it's still odd. Look at what the prophet said this. Said, look, build houses, plant gardens, get married, have kids, do what is good for the city where you're going to be staying. And in doing what you need to do in the place where you are, you're going to find your own blessing. Don't listen to folk that I have not authorized to talk to you. And after 70 years, we're going to try to get this thing together. And you know why? Because the thoughts I have towards you, the plans I have for you, are not to destroy you, but it's to get you in order. It's not for evil, but it's for a future and a hope. And guess what? When you call on me, I'm still going to answer you. I know you're not where you want to be, but I'm still going to what? See about you right where you are. See, church, a lot of people get so caught up in environments, they forget the fact that God always promised that he would never leave nor forsake. And if you were here last week, you remember that when David wrote the psalm, he said that where can I go from your spirit? If I'm in heaven, you're there. If I go to hell, you're there. If I go over here, you're there. So the same God that David wrote about is the same God that Jeremiah speaks on the behalf of, that we have to be reminded that God has never left the situation. God had to move his people from one spot to another to get some things in order. Because what God is saying is, in this space, I'm going to teach you how to win again. You and I need to learn how to win in every circumstance. You mean to tell me that we can win when everything is bad? Yes, we can. You mean to tell me that with crazy people in office that God will prosper us? Yes, he will. You mean to tell me that with all that has happened within the life of our church that we're going to prosper? Sure enough, we can do it. It doesn't make a difference about the conditions of what we're going through. It's about the God that should be the God over us that helps us to what? Win at all costs. If you haven't noticed this, and this is not an arrogant statement because I want this to rub off on everybody that I'm around, don't you know something about me by now? I ain't a loser. And guess what? I don't hang out with losers. which means that nobody in here is a loser. Let me say that one more again so nobody misunderstands what I just said. I ain't a loser, and I don't hang out with losers. That means that everybody in here that I'm with right now is not a loser, which means that no matter what you are facing right now, you need to tell yourself before the end of this sermon, I am a winner. I'm a winner not just because I said so, but because God said so. And let me tell you what God has to say about this so you understand why you're still a winner no matter what. 5 things you need to catch real quick. To make sure that you're winning in every condition, these things have to take place. Number 1, you got to be intentional in your production. You got to be intentional in your production. You can't just do stuff for the sake of doing stuff. You can't just do stuff for the sake of doing it. Listen to what the prophet said on behalf of God. I know you're going here because I sent you there. And I know you're going to be subject to what happens in Babylon. But here's what you need to do while you're there. Don't waste your time complaining about why you're there. You need to do some work. Build a house while you're there. Plant a garden. Do things that are conducive, listen for this, that are conducive to community. Because if you waste time worrying about when you're going to get out, you're going to forget about how to do stuff in order to prosper. Y'all catching? See, the problem that most people have is that while they're going through, they internalize all the stuff that's happening and suddenly forget how to function. And when you forget how to function, you'll do anything you can to feel different than what the situation is making you feel. But God is saying, I need you to be intentional about living even though the situation is not what you want. If you're building a house, that means you're still knowing how to what? Plant roots. If you're planting things and making a garden, you're making sure that you got provision and you're not forgetting how to what? Get the things you need. If you're going around and being around people, you're not forgetting about how to be in communication with folk you say you love. Do you see where I'm going? If you are the church of the living God and you go out and talk about the Lord on my behalf, even if there's not 100 or 200 people in church, you're not forgetting about how to evangelize the world. If you go ahead and pray for somebody, even though your situation is not what you want it to be, you will not forget about how to call on me and knowing that I will answer. If you still worship my name and sing and praise my name, even when others are not on your side, you will not forget how to praise me when it's good. Because if you can shout when it's bad, you sure enough can shout when it's good. You got to be intentional about what you do. Number 2, you got to be engaged in relationships. Look at this other part. Look at this other part. Send your kids to get hooked up. Now, that sounds one way, but I want you not to miss something, okay? Don't miss this. Don't stop engaging each other, because you're going to need in this period of time people that you have commonality with. If you're going somewhere, you need to be around people that you have some commonality with. Everybody's not the same, but there should be some things that what? Draw us together. Which means that we have to every now and then not just wait till church comes, sit down and talk to somebody. Have some tea, have some coffee, talk about nothing. You know the best part of my week? Best part of my week was on a Tuesday, sitting with some folk, visiting one of our members, talking about nothing. We ain't talk about nothing. We talked about every possible. Look, and some people be like, wait a minute, are you? No, I'm dead serious. We sat around. We may have talked about church maybe 5 or 6 of the, I don't know, we were there over an hour and a half, and we ain't talked about church for maybe about 6 or 7 minutes. We talked about everything else. We talked about how we don't like certain football teams. We talked about how folk get on our nerves, reminiscing on folk that ain't here no more and how they were so interesting, to say the least. We were doing all kind of stuff and had a good time. Why? Because every now and then you just got to get around some folk that you got some stuff in common with. It don't hurt. Listen, church, it don't hurt. It don't hurt. It don't hurt to laugh sometimes. It don't hurt to just be around some people and know that what you feel in a moment is safe with them. It doesn't hurt to be around people that when they look at you, they're not looking at you just to be this or that, but they see you just as a human being that's got something in common with them. Some of y'all that are married, you have some commonality with your spouse. That's how you got together. Let me tell you how that commonality probably worked out. Because, you know, some of y'all got together before I was even on this earth. But I figure it kind of went like this. One of y'all saw the other. One of y'all thought that person was fine. You rolled up on them and you said, you know what? Hey, let's go and let's kick it for a while. Let's have a good old time. You did whatever you wanted to do. You had a good time. And the next thing you found out, after you found out that you were attracted, you found out you had something more. You thought about some things the same way. You had some things in common. And then after a while, you said to yourself, you know what? I can't see my life without you. And then you looked around and said, I can't see my life without you. And guess what? You got together, spent some money, said I do, and years later you're still together. And after all this time, we don't want to tell nobody that sometimes it is still that simple. Hook up with somebody every now and then. Find out something about somebody, and you will discover that you are what? Right where you need to be. Be engaged with one another. Encounter one another. Learn about one another. What else? In this, you got to draw closer to God. The reason they were in exile was because they decided that their thoughts were higher than God's thoughts. So God said, cool. I'm going to remind you who I am. I gave you this from the beginning. So you come on over here and sit yourself down in a place that don't look like what I gave you. And now you got to figure it out. But while you're here for these 70 years, that's deep. It wasn't 5 minutes. I'm going to sit you down for 70 years. And while you're here, get yourself together, learn how to build again, learn how to be community again, learn how to come together again. But guess what? While you're over here, you can still call on me, and I'm going to answer you. God didn't leave them by themselves. He said, look, call on me, and I'll answer. I'm still going to be with you in trouble. You got to learn how to draw back to me. Every now and then, we got to learn how to say to ourselves, can I learn how to fall back in love with God all over again? Life will beat you up so much, sometimes you forget about how to just stop every once in a while. And you don't even have to wait till you come to church, but every once in a while, you just at home and you just say, you know what, I'm going to shut it all down because the Lord needs to hear from me and I need to hear from God. I want you to understand that it's not just for everybody out here, but it's for me too. Because the thing about this week, I was so messed up. I was like, why am I stuck? I want to do some work. I want to do this. I want to do that. And God said, guess what? You need to learn how to come back to me again. I was like, what? I've been calling on you all week. I've been talking to you all the time. But he's like, no. You need to come back to me like you used to. And I was like, ooh, I know what that means. That means to shut down and stuff. That means hearing you clearly. That means not just praying for my stuff, but really talking to you about the things about me, really opening up myself and saying, God, there's some things in me that ain't right. There's some ways about me that ain't cool, and there's some stuff that I don't want in me that I need you to take out of me. And there's some things in me that got to change, because if I'm going to do what you want me to do, I need you more than anything else in this world. Every now and then, if you want to win, you got to get back to your source. If you want to be able to win at all costs, at all times, you got to get back to your source. Is there anybody in here that knows that the first time you fell in love with Jesus, it was the sweetest thing that ever happened to you? Can you remember about that time when you first believed and nothing else mattered? It wasn't about people just bringing you to church, but nobody could stop you from coming to the house of God. Every now and then you were in your house. Nobody could stop you from praising God in your home. Do you remember those moments that it just felt so good that when you came up from it, it didn't matter what people said, didn't matter what people did. You knew that you had encountered the Almighty God. Sometimes you need to ask God, draw me close, closer than before, closer than I've ever been. Next thing you got to remember, to win in all conditions, you got to remain faithful. You got to remain faithful. Just because things don't go like you want doesn't give you the license to suddenly stop doing what you need to do for God. And people would say, wouldn't that be a great reason to do it? Maybe, but I want you to think about this. Think about this for a moment. God gave a command to the people even in the midst of exiling them. That the real test was not about them being exiled. You want to know what the real test was? Are you still going to be my people even when I got to correct you? Are you still going to come to me even when it's not what you want? Are you going to trust that my thoughts and plans toward you are really in place to prosper you, even though it doesn't look like it right now? Are you going to remain faithful, or are you just going to sell out because it's rough? Everybody in here at some point has had a sellout moment. Everybody has. And guess what? That's okay. All of us at some point had to repent of a sellout moment, where it's just like, I'm just going to give this up and just walk. It gets frustrating when things don't seem to be working out. But it's also frustrating when you don't even know how God is going to work this thing out. We can tell the truth in here. Is that all right? On the one side, it's frustrating because you know God has a plan. But on the other side, it's frustrating because you don't know how the plan is going to come together. It's frustrating when you're actually trying to walk this thing out, and on the other side, people are walking away because they just don't want it like this. But nevertheless, stay faithful. Even when people come, because on the bookends of this message from Jeremiah, there are prophets that are coming trying to convince the people, your day is coming and God is going to rescue and bring you out. And God spoke to Jeremiah and said, they don't speak for me. You do. They don't. Let them know that those fools don't speak for me. And what I'm laying out is actually for their good. Imagine what that had to be like. You got to tell folk this is going to be for 70 years. And you're going to have to commit to living even when it's not ideal. Some of you have gone through this year in 2019 like me, having to live in the most difficult of conditions. Look, we're almost at the end of the year. That's why we're going to shout our way out of 2019, because some of us in here, I've lived through some things this year that I never thought I would have to live through, and it was piled on and piled on and piled on. Deaths, challenges in my family, deaths in my family, sickness, illness, all kind of stuff. And yet, on this Sunday morning, I can look at y'all and tell you that no matter what has been thrown my way, and as troubling as some of it has been, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, even if it was kicking and screaming, I thank God that I remained with him. Because if I would not held on, I don't know where I would be. Some of you in here have the same testimony, and you have been going through for the last 10 months plus, and you ain't shouted yet. I'm giving you about 2 good seconds to think about what you've been through, and the fact that you're here right now, that is worthy of a shout. Because if you had not held on, you might not be here right now. But because God holds your hand, and you've been able to say, in spite of it all, I'm going to trust you because you've been faithful, God has kept you. You got to hold out. Because if you hold out, here comes the last thing, and this is where we're going to go. You might as well stay on your feet. We're going to fly away now. Because if you hold on, then you're going to know that it's time to prepare yourself for the payoff. Because look, God had already set the clock. He said 70 years you're going to be gone. But when I come back, all right, if you ain't going to do it, I'm going to do it. See, God will set the clock. Regardless of what you're going through, God has already set the clock. So right now, my job is to do what I got to do until the clock strikes 0. Because if I hold out, if I keep pushing, if I keep going, then at the end of the clock, I'm going to come out as victorious. You got to understand, it's not in the halftime. It's not in the first quarter. It's not in the second quarter. It's not in the third quarter. It's not even in the fourth quarter. But I'm playing until the clock strikes 0. Because when it strikes 0, I'm going to come out and I'm going to be better and I will be declared victorious. Is there anybody in here that can shout right now about being victorious? Victorious over death, victorious over sickness, victorious over being broke, victorious over all that. When the clock strikes 0, I shall come forth and be declared the winner. And why? Because God said, for I know the plans I have for you. Plans for your welfare, not for evil. To give you a future. This moment is not to kill you, it's to prepare you for your future and a hope. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I'll hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. You're coming out a winner. You may be here today, and you're worried about your condition. You're worried about what's happening around you. Can I tell you something? When you say yes to the Lord, you have set yourself up, not just to make it, but to win. This is your opportunity, if you have never made a confession of faith, to come into the knowledge of who Christ is and win. You may have already done that, and you need to find yourself in a church home. No better place, no better time than to come and plant yourself in this space so you can become the winner that you need to be. If you're here today, would you come?